Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 14. Recording this on Tuesday morning, September 10th. Want to get you guys these on Mondays, but had a 6 a.m. flight yesterday, and the film was kind of in late. So I thought I'd delay it a little bit, and it would give me some time to further bake and marinate in Sunday's 28-6 shellacking of the Giants. It wasn't close. I remember turning to ESPN Vikings beat writer Kevin Seifert not early, but maybe in the third quarter it was like 21-6 or something, and I'm like, it's not even this close. So it went about how I expected. I think my prediction before the game was like 26-14, and that'll probably be the best prediction I have of the year, considering how brutal sometimes I can be in that regard. But a lot to get to. I will kind of format this today as kind of like a five-some. I mean, I'm just going to give you 5 thoughts from the game, looking back, but also in some ways looking forward. I actually have watched a little bit of the 2023 game between the Vikings and the 49ers already. I obviously watched Monday night's 49ers-Jets game. So kind of we'll dovetail a little what happened Sunday and what might happen this upcoming Sunday in a game that will be a totally different test. I mean, this is like taking a spelling test or something was this past Sunday, and then the ACT is this upcoming Sunday. It is 2 very different teams. The infrastructure of those 2 organizations could not be between the Giants and the 49ers probably further apart in terms of the way they hum and they operate and they evaluate and they coach. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Before we get into the 5 thoughts that I had, please like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, YouTube, would really appreciate that. I've had a lot of fun doing these, and yeah, it's been a fun little balance of the daily writing that I'm doing at The Athletic, where you can find a lot of the contextualized view of what I'm seeing and hearing and viewing on a daily basis, covering this team. But also, it's fun for me to just get on here and be able to kick things around with you guys, and you probably just hear more of an unfiltered view of how I'm thinking about what I've seen and what I've heard and all of that. So let's just hop right into it. I think that's the best way to go. And obviously, unsurprisingly, we will start with Sam Darnold. I mean, as you guys know, going into that game Sunday, that was the A topic. That was the most intriguing facet of the Vikings matchup against the Giants, at a stadium that Sam Darnold was very familiar with after his playing days with the Jets, which I wrote about in pretty good detail last week. He was in some just absolutely abysmal situations. There was one coach who described to me as playing for Adam Gase was like learning Mandarin in terms of how complex of a scheme that was. And so to see Sam Darnold go out and perform, I mean, that was as you guys probably can relate, it was this question mark, this uncertainty that was going to be very interesting to watch. And I mean, during the game, I mean, when you start 12 for 12, it's impossible not to be impressed. In the rewatch of the game, I mean, I was and watching the all 22, I was just struck by the calmness, the comfort, and really like the plan that the Vikings orchestrated for him. I mean, really, that is where my mind went as I watched this thing. It was, I mean, each play seemed to have a pretty good intent, and Sam Darnold seemed to have a pretty good grasp on what each play asked of him. And that's really something that, like, you can take for granted, I think, on the outside of, like, why has Kyle Shanahan been so successful in San Francisco? Why is Sean McVay in Los Angeles had so much success and with quarterbacks there with Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford? I think a lot of it is because these quarterbacks know exactly where they need to go with the football on a consistent basis once the snap happens, which allows them not to feel the anxiety that you saw on the other side with Daniel Jones in terms of where do I go with the ball, what's happening, where do I look, who's going where. It's the toughest part of the position. I think the more I've covered this game and the more you just think about it, it's like a lot of these guys have arm talent. Sam Darnold was drafted with the number 3 pick for a reason. Like, this guy can sling it. You saw that on the 44-yard pass down the sideline to Justin Jefferson. It was, I mean, I wrote this, but I'm like, the only thing that would do that pass justice was having the shot tracer that they have on the PGA Tour to show the arc of that pass. It was absolutely beautiful, and it was right in our direction where we were sitting in the press box. But the more you watch these quarterbacks play, the more you realize, like, the mental bandwidth in terms of what they have to look at pre-snap, the verbiage of the play, and then post-snap processing, which might be the ultimate indicator of why guys succeed or fail. Like, it is on the coaching staff to mitigate the amount of just thought that is in their mind before, during, and after some of these plays. Because as I had a conversation weeks ago with Ryan Cordell, who's the Vikings game management specialist, and he's in Kevin O'Connell's ear, throughout all of these 4th down decisions and special teams calls. Do we punt? Do we kick? And Ryan's like, what he said to me, what I don't think people understand is, like, this is a 40-second sprint every single time. You hear the play call, you relay the play call, you're scanning the defense, you're snapping the ball, you're feeling pressure, you're assessing the defense, and then the play ends and you're doing this sprint again. It's like being on the clock. I mean, I probably already used the ACT kind of expression, but it's like you are on the clock for every single question, and it's this mental grind paired with this physical, freaky kind of aspect that these guys are placed in. So I thought the calmness that you saw from Sam Darnold, the ability for him to feel like at the snap on most of these plays, he knew exactly where he was going with the ball. He was able to verify why he was going there, if that was the right decision. There was one play probably in rewatching the film that I thought, like, that's a little bit of what can happen if Sam Darnold is sped up, or if he has to continue to process and go 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. There was a play over the middle where he was, I think, going to Jordan Addison. He drops back, he scans, moves in the middle of the field, and then kind of threw it in a harm's way. And that was probably the one play where I'm like, I'm sure, and I believe in real time afterward, Sam Darnold looked at the sideline like, that's on me. I cannot put us in that position. And so against better secondaries, against smarter secondaries, which the 49ers obviously are, when you have Fred Warner and you have Charvarius Ward, and you have Diamador Lenore, and you have Devondre Campbell, guys who have played a lot of football, a lot of really good football, who have been have communicated together for a long time. Like Sam Darnold will be tested in that environment. But I think you could feel really, really good if you're listening to this, if you're watching these games, knowing that what he's going to be asked to do, Sam Darnold, is very thought out. It's very tailored to, there was a lot of like high-low reads toward the sideline. There was not a ton of, okay, process over the middle, watch guys flying across the screen and make decisions. There was not a lot of that. And I thought the more that they can keep him out of having to process for multiple reads, not that he can't do it, because he did. And there were a couple checkdowns where he got to the 4th read where I was like, yeah, that was very impressive that he even got to Aaron Jones there. But the more they can keep him out of that, which they did Sunday, which they're going to have to do Sunday against the 49ers, I think the better off he's going to be, and I think he will be capable. I mean, that's really what stood out to me. Like, yes, you're going against Jason Pinnock and Deonte Banks and Adoree Jackson and Cordell Flott, not the most special secondary ever. In fact, it might be one of the worst in the NFL. But, like, it's still an NFL secondary. That's the other thing. Like, it's easy to overreact one way or another after all Week 1 games, obviously, without question. But these are NFL defenses. This is a scheme by Shane Bowen that was complex. It required the Vikings to carry a lot of different plays, a lot of personnel groupings, because they didn't really know what they were going to get. And so to see them be that effective, to see Sam Darnold complete nearly 80% of his passes, it's just a very good sign. And I'm not going to go more than that. My takeaway really from watching him was he did what he was asked to do, which is a really well-constructed, well-taught plan that you just saw come to life. And I think you could take for granted that not all NFL organizations, not all offenses cough, cough, like the Giants on the other side are that well constructed on a weekly basis to put the quarterback in optimal situations. So that was kind of my takeaway with Sam Darnold, and I felt like that was the right place to start. My second point here, I mean, you cannot overstate Aaron Jones' performance on Sunday. I did not think a lot of the run blocking looks were phenomenal. I didn't think a ton of stuff was well blocked. There were some mid-zone type runs, some counter schemes that were effective that allowed these guys. I mean, there was even I believe it was a duo or inside zone play in the red zone where Aaron Jones bounced it outside, but that's vision. And that was, I mean, really watching it back. I mean, there's the numbers that will tell you that yards after contact, which is one of the best indications of how good a running back is at creating. Aaron Jones was as high as you could find, I think right behind J.K. Dobbins in the NFL in week 1 for what he did after contact. So that it just shows you kind of his how much he can create, which they did not have last year, obviously, in Alexander Mattison. And I even in 2022 with Dalvin Cook, he left a lot to be desired when holes weren't blocked. I mean, when the plays weren't blocked well. And so I said the vision, but that was really it. Like, he is able to set up blocks and see things at a level that I'm not sure you can teach. Like, I'm fascinated because if you listen to NFL running backs talk, and they'll talk like some of them stick to the lines drawn on the paper, and some of them are just free balling out there and they have the vision to be able to make it work. I feel like Aaron Jones blends those two styles perfectly. Like, he knows well and good what is expected of him on that specific run, but he also has this special both level of vision and burst to make things right if what's drawn on the paper is not laid out for him. And so, I mean, I expected Aaron. I mean, if you've listened to me, you guys watched him. You guys have watched him play against the Vikings longer than I have, so you know what this guy is capable of. But I think some people externally question, like, well, he's gotten older. How good can he be? It's like I said last year's playoffs, when he is healthy, I think he's the most underrated player in the NFL, skill player, and he validated that in every regard Sunday. I mean, it's a joy to watch. You can't overstate either the presence that he has in the locker room. He will talk to the media every week, and he's so comfortable. He's so motivated. It's one of those where you really, I want, the Packers don't seem to miss all the time, but this is one where I wonder if Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst, the GM over there, is sitting in the offices, like scrolling, clicking through the tape, like, what the hell did we do? Part of me would imagine as they watch, they're focused on their own situations, but if they do watch it back, they're going to be like, gosh, dang, this guy is freaking good. So that stood out both in person. He had 2 explosive runs in a row in the third quarter, and this Vikings offense has not had explosive run games at all since Dalvin Cook. But even with Dalvin Cook, it was kind of few and far between in 2022 when I first got here. So they're going to need him to be that guy in every regard to put Sam Darnold and put the offense in general in these optimal situations, in the 2nd and 5s, in the 3rd and shorts. Like, you do not probably want Sam Darnold to be dropping back on 3rd and 8. You don't want any quarterback in those situations when pass rushers like Nick Bosa are breathing down your neck. I mean, you saw that with Aaron Rodgers last night. Like, it's not, you can't live and thrive as an offense that way. And so, as I watch Aaron Jones, I'm like, just props to them for making that happen, for doing what the front office, this regime, the coaching staff pushing for it. However they ended up being able to acquire that guy, and the savvy nature of being able to do it kind of very quickly after the Vikings, the Packers let him go. Props to them. Very, very, very good move. Now he just has to stay healthy. It sounds like they have a pretty rigorous plan, but that was my second just thought watching this game. Like, this guy is going to elevate this offense in a way that we expected, but it was good to see it. The third point is going to be about the offensive line, and I haven't written about this yet because I kind of want to watch them play the week 2 game against the 49ers before kind of going crazy with it. You guys who are listening to this are smart enough to know that that we didn't talk a ton about the interior and questions on the interior, but it exists. Now, the edges with Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, those guys are, I mean, money. It's easy to take for granted, I think, the ability to just know that you can kind of diffuse the Brian Birds and the Kayvon Thibodeaux the way that the Vikings are able to with Christian Darrisaw and with Brian O'Neill. Now, Nick Bosa is an entirely different test. He was last year, and the Vikings' offensive plan for the 49ers game in Week 7, I thought of 2023 was one of the best plans that Kevin O'Connell has put together in his time as the Vikings head coach. I expect them to have a pretty good plan, but the interior, I mean, yeah, it left a lot to be desired. Now, Dexter Lawrence is, to steal a phrase from Blake Brandell, the left guard, a grizzly bear on the field. Like, this guy is massive, strong, long arms. He is I mean, if you were to design a player on the interior in a lab that you do not want to go up defensively against, it's Dexter Lawrence. I mean, that guy is absolutely menacing, strikes fear in you, and all of the Vikings interior offensive linemen had it out for them on Sunday. There's no question about that at all. None of them had more of an issue than Ed Ingram, which is not, you guys are probably like, we got to talk about Ed Ingram again. Yeah, we do. And it's not surprising if you have analyzed this team from the outside. Ed's first year, you give him credit for his availability. He played every game. There was a lot of bad, but there was some good. They stuck, the Vikings regime stuck with them from a developmental standpoint in year 2. There was some bad early on. Specifically, I can remember against the Chargers game, I believe, the Bucs game, the Panthers game in Carolina. But ultimately, he ended up playing most of the season, and the Vikings entered year 3 seemingly comfortable enough with him at right guard. Now, you're never going to have a perfect offensive line. So it just doesn't, you don't find those groupings all the time. But it's concerning when you have a guy in Sam Darnold who needs time to be able to execute, not have to be forced out of the pocket to then go create and potentially put the ball in harm's way. Like, they need this interior to be shored up. And while Blake Brandell, I thought, had a really solid first outing, and while Dexter Lawrence is a one-of-a-kind type of freak alongside of Chris Jones, probably in the NFL for what they can for the pressure they can put on you, you're teetering kind of in some capacity. Like Sunday, you hope that those guys can the Garrett Bradbury, the Ed Ingrams can be enough of a stalwart to give Sam Darnold enough time, but it's a question mark. And I mentioned Aaron Jones, obviously, in his running ability. I thought there were a lot of times where he was making those guys right. It didn't feel so much as if, they've taken such a step forward in their run blocking unit and their scheme that this is just going to be a totally different run game. No, to me, it was Aaron Jones made those guys right a lot of times. And so, that Giants front is very good. I think Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeaux were so quiet that we'll see what that front ends up doing all year. But it's the spot offensively beyond probably the receiver depth situation, which I wrote about for Tuesday at The Athletic. In the event that they don't have Jordan Addison, it's going to be a lot on Jalen Naylor. But other than that position group, and obviously tight end until TJ Hawkinson comes back, like, the interior of the offensive line still gives me pause because, you saw on the interior pressure where Sam Darnold ended up, his arm got tipped and he threw the interception. Like, for him to succeed, for the quarterback right now, and Sam Darnold for the Vikings to succeed, things around him need to be really good. And I'm not sure if there's a more important thing around him that needs to be good than the interior in terms of the pressure those guys on the opposing teams can create. So it's a spot I'm watching. Probably won't write a ton about it this week because I want another data point sample size to be able to really evaluate what those guys are capable of. And look, like last year, as you guys probably remember in Week 7, that group was stout, but Dalton Reisner was the left guard at the time. Garrett Bradbury and Ed Ingram held their own in that game. So maybe they duplicate that performance on Sunday. And if they do, then props to them. Props to Ed Ingram. But we'll see. It's a question mark that I have offensively. Number 4, kind of a spin zone here, but leading into Sunday's game against the Giants, I expected Brian Flores to just send the house at Daniel Jones. I mean, Daniel Jones had ranked 48th among 48 qualified quarterbacks against pressure in 2023. So I thought Brian Flores was just going to let it eat. And here's what he did. Brian Flores was essentially Ed Donatell. He kind of like gave Daniel Jones the exact once the defense ultimately declared, it was often the same type of shape that Daniel Jones saw with Ed Donatell in 2022 and carved up in 2022. But the difference is Brian Flores is in his defensive, both pre-snap looks and just the vibe that you get when you're facing him gives you such anxiety pre-snap that you feel like you're going to be pressured. You feel like 6 guys are going to be coming at you at all times. You feel like you've got to check every box pre-snap with, do we have this guy protected? Do we have this guy protected? That it's in your head and it speeds up your clock. And that's the difference. And that's part of what makes Brian Flores' defense so great is that even when he does not bring pressure, there is the illusion of it that speeds up quarterbacks. And I will also give credit to the defensive personnel. There were a lot of times in watching the All-22 back where you saw Harrison Smith, Cam Bynum, Stephon Gilmore, these smart, experienced, savvy players dictate. I mean, it looked like they were about to run a one-high look, and then they drop back in 2 safety shells. There were times where it looked like they were going to bring 7, and then they only bring 3. And that is the Brian Flores experience, but it also is so interesting to me because if you go back to last year's game against the 49ers, and I'll write about this later this week, I mean, Brian Flores and them were bringing a lot of 5-man pressure, a lot of 6-man pressure. So not only does bringing 4 against the Giants work and speed up Daniel Jones's clock and kind of it's a deception game for Daniel Jones this past weekend, it also presents the 49ers with an interesting question all week as they study Brian Flores' defense. They probably have to ask themselves internally, well, we've got a plan for 7-man pressure, 6-man pressure, 5-man pressure, but now Brian Flores has shown that he'll just rush 4. So what do we do in that regard? What are our concepts that work against 4-man pressure? Beyond even that, I went back and watched a little bit of the like I said, the 2023 game between the Vikings and the 49ers. And the Vikings were not able to drop their edge rushers in that game. DJ Wonnum and Danielle Hunter were essentially rushing off the edge every single game. You guys know, after watching Sunday, Andrew Van Ginkel can drop, and when he does, he can be damn effective. Dallas Turner, similarly, when he drops, he is aware of what's going on around him at a level that last year, if you watch the game, it was a lot of like fake pass rushing with Harrison Phillips and Dean Lowry dropping, which Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan just ate up, whether it was throwing outside the numbers, whether it was throwing over the middle. It's an entirely different test. And rewatching that game, I think I was struck by, like, you guys know how much they've done to enhance the personnel in the defensive unit. It's partly why there have been a lot of people internally that are like, nationally, we are not getting credit for how good we might be able to be defensively. But you go back and watch that game, it's a Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth Jr. on the edge at cornerback. And it's like, this group is entirely different. And then I mentioned Dean Lowry. Now it's Jerry Tillery, who had, I believe, like a 14% pressure rate, which was one of the highest of the Vikings pass rushers this past Sunday. So this Brock Purdy test and this 49ers test, it's not like they can just review last year's film and be like, okay, this is how they attacked us, and this is how we'll counteract it this time. The personnel creates an entirely different puzzle that this 49ers team has to answer, which is why Sunday is going to be so interesting. But my takeaway was like, Flores really was just like, you know what? They'll never expect us to act like Ed Donatell. And they kind of did, just rushing for most of the game, creating pressure with those guys. Andrew Thomas, the Giants left tackle, is a specimen of a left tackle, and he diffused a lot of pressure at a lot of times. But I think it's this Sunday matchup is going to be absolutely fascinating. And really, it probably starts with, can they stop the run? Whether Christian McCaffrey is healthy or whether it's Jordan Mason. The Vikings did a good job last year limiting the 49ers to 2.5 yards per play on rushing situations and against the rush. If they can duplicate that number and then put Brock Purdy in a situation where he's having to sort through a lot on the field, this could be one where the Vikings do surprise. I really do believe that. And then that gets to number 5 for me, which I kind of touched on right there. But like, just going back and rewatching last year's 49ers game and then watching Sunday back in the All-22, the personnel enhancement is stark. Like, Blake Cashman, his speed and vision and speed is at a level that, while I love Jordan Hicks, and I thought he was a phenomenal veteran in the room, and he read he was very savvy at that position, at the off-ball linebacker spot. But the smarts of this defense, like the Harrison Smiths, the Cam Bynums, Josh Metellus, Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, Ivan Pace, Dallas Turner, these guys are really intelligent football players. They are aware of what's going on around them. They don't need to just be told, go straight rush the passer, probably like DJ Wanham and Danielle Hunter, who played extremely well last year. And Danielle is obviously probably a borderline Hall of Fame player with what he's accomplished when he's been healthy over the course of his career. Like, to take nothing away from them, this personnel is just, it fits like a glove, much more like a glove for what Brian Flores wants to get done, which is to be versatile, to be aware, to beat the opposing offense with your mind. And so, like I said, there has been optimism internally about what this group can accomplish. But I think just seeing it on paper, even with it being against a quarterback in Daniel Jones who leaves an abundance of skill to be desired, and an offense in New York that did not look well structured in that first game Sunday, I don't think those aspects mitigate the takeaway that this defensive personnel allows Brian Flores to do so much more, and really just it is such an intelligent unit. Like, I mean, we could talk about age and experience and what guys have accomplished, but like the Andrew Van Ginkel play where he picks off Daniel Jones, Ivan Pace Jr. was at the ready to blow up that play, which you saw on film. Stephon Gilmore, you saw him with eyes on Daniel Jones, drift back into coverage like he's dropping into quarters look, and then like beeline toward the flat, like knowing that he was allowing that look and being able to tackle that look. So I just this defense is very interesting. If they can stay healthy and they can stop the run, which I think they can do with Jonathan Bullard, Harrison Phillips, and Jerry Tillery in 5 down fronts, which you'll probably see a lot of this upcoming Sunday, then you can put these quarterbacks kind of in a blender. Now, maybe Brock Purdy, who I have a lot of respect for, and Kyle Shanahan can out-scheme and beat those looks. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is capable of doing that. Maybe CJ Stroud is so advanced that he can, but it's going to be a test for these quarterbacks. So I think the more that Dallas Turner gets reps, the better in terms of pass rushing skill set he'll have. I came away, like the PFF grade on Dallas Turner was not phenomenal, but there were a lot of snaps where he's rushing against Andrew Thomas. And I can't imagine a better example of potential development for him than going up against an elite left tackle in his first game of his career to know, like, okay, this is what it's going to take. And again, his eyes were very active. Like, he knew what he was looking at. He was very aware. Kevin O'Connell said something Sunday after the game of like Andrew Van Ginkel is kind of like a middle linebacker playing on the edge. And in some ways, I think Dallas Turner provides that on the opposite side. And then I haven't talked a ton about Jonathan Grenard, but he had the most pressures on this defense. So maybe a lot of this is optimistic, and maybe you're like, Alex, slow down, it's the Giants. And that's totally okay. And I mean, this is with the week-to-week narratives in this league and the media reaction, that's that's kind of how this thing goes. But I all of these 5 aspects, the teaching plan and the game plan being very good. Aaron Jones really impressing. The offensive line being concerning in some regard on the interior, but the tackles being stalwarts and comfortable. Brian Flores mixing it up and kind of being like Ed Donatel, which was but with his own flavor. And then just the personnel improvement. Like, I don't think any of these are crazy overreactions or me being too optimistic. So, that all has gone through my head in the 2 games since Sunday. I hope a lot of that makes sense. I hope that synthesizes a lot of maybe what you guys are thinking. What I will say is look on Twitter for a call for questions for later in the week. We'll have a guest later in the week to kind of preview Sunday's game and talk further about what we're going to see for the 49ers. I hope you guys enjoy this little monologue, little 5-thought type of structure. Let me know what you guys think, what you guys want more of, how you think we should be going about these post-game reactions. In the meantime, as I said at the top, both read our stories at The Athletic. There's a lot more to come this week, next, and beyond. Like and subscribe. You can hit that button if you're on YouTube right there. Should be pretty easy. If you're listening on podcast form on Apple, Spotify, it should be pretty seamless to give a couple stars or so on. So, appreciate you guys listening. Gonna head out to the facility and get back to work, but always enjoy talking to you guys. I hope you guys got a flavor for how I've been thinking about things after the game. Want to know. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. If you're going to the game at US Bank, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to be back in that environment. I'm not gonna be able to sleep Saturday night because of how much adrenaline will be coursing through my veins. That's how much I enjoy this. I hope that comes across on a weekly basis. But that will do it for the Alec Lewis Show. That's what we call it. That's my name. It shouldn't be that hard to remember. Thank you guys for listening, and we will be back.